What's up, everybody? Welcome in. Wes Mitchell here, GC Live, Monday edition of the show. Whether you're joining us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or on the audio-only podcast after the fact, we do appreciate it. Either way, any way you join us, we, of course, appreciate the support. Wes Mitchell again here, flying solo today. What's up, Fred? What's up, everybody else already joining us? I see the numbers already going up. So appreciate you guys and girls joining us here on Monday. Plenty to get to. Again, I'm Wes. Solo show today. Chris taking a little bit of vacation, getting out of town, hanging out with the family a little bit. They rolled out on Sunday, I believe, and will be back next weekend. And then, of course, next Monday, Chris will be back on the show with me. So I was thinking about not having a show just because I much prefer doing the shows with someone else. But actually, with so much going on this weekend, I figured y'all had a lot to talk about, and I figured I'd get on here and chat with y'all. We'll sort of go maybe a little bit more Q&A style today. Whatever you folks want to talk about, I'll certainly frame the show around that, but also have taken some notes on stuff we need to hit just because, as I said, it was a very busy weekend starting. We talked about it on Friday leading into the weekend. It was going to be a very exciting weekend for anybody who is a South Carolina athletics fan, and it did not disappoint as far as the excitement level. Obviously, at least one of the major results, not quite what anybody in Gamecock Nation wanted, but the excitement level was there. Let's see. First of all, got to tell everybody about my good buddy Clint Hammond. Clint Hammond is our presenting sponsor. Clint helps make this show possible, and Clint is the main man at Mortgage Network here in Columbia, South Carolina. Those of you in the area, their office is right over there across from Dreer High School near the Dunkin' Donuts. So if you want to drop in person, you can actually go by and see Clint there. But check out his information, ClintHammond.com. You see it right above my head every single show if you watch on video, if you watch on the stream. 803-771-6933. Again, that is ClintHammond.com, 803-771-6933. Clint helps make this show possible, and we, of course, appreciate Clint for everything he does for us here at GC Live. Clint, a huge, not just GC Live supporter, but a Gamecock Central subscriber and a huge Gamecock fan. So I know a lot of you like to support other people who own and run businesses that, are South Carolina fans, South Carolina people, South Carolina families. Clint's your guy. He'll get you a low interest rate, help you through the process, whether you're a first-time home buyer or you're just, maybe wanting to refinance and get a little bit lower interest rate, save some money. Go check Clint out again, ClintHammond.com. If y'all hear that clicking, that's me just getting my links up on the page. Again, flying solo today. Hope you all had a great weekend. Hope you had a great Easter. Hope you had a great sports weekend. It was exciting, if nothing else, for South Carolina fans this weekend. Local Sports Talk wants to know how much is it to subscribe to Gamecock Central. Generally, you're looking at about $10 a month, about $100 per year if you do the annual subscription. We do almost always have some type of new, not always, but we run a lot of specials to get people in and sort of let them see what it's all about. If you go to the front page right now, there's actually a buy 1 month, get 4 free special we're running right now with the code Carolina G4. So before we get into football, before we get into baseball, before we get into men's basketball, I thought we have to go back, talk for a second about the women's basketball game on Friday. And I'm telling y'all, so on Friday, I think this was on Friday, I said, you've kind of reached that point where no matter what happens, of course, referring to the women's basketball team, making it all the way to the Final Four as a 1 seed. If you're a 1 seed, then, if you win all the games, you're going to be projected to win, you make it to the Final Four. So then if you make it to the Final Four, you're sort of saying, okay, no matter what happens moving forward, this season is a success. Well, then you get into the game, and if you're a fan and you realize there's a chance to win the game, nobody wants to sit there and talk, here we are 2-3 days later about the missed opportunity that was and how it happened. But my biggest takeaway from the game is something I saw echoed throughout Twitter and really not just from South Carolina fans, but so many other just fans of sports that were watching the game on Friday, was just how hard South Carolina competed. How this was no fluke. Stanford was the national champion, and South Carolina, shot for shot, belonged absolutely on the same court with Stanford. Now, credit them. They got the job done last night on Sunday. They got the job done on Friday with, yes, a little bit of help from the referees. Give them credit. They got the job done. But your South Carolina Gamecocks 100% belonged on the same court. 100%, I believe, are here to stay, are going to compete, just the same they did this year. They're going to compete next year for that title. I wouldn't bet against the Gamecocks going into next year. But, man, what a game. That's the other takeaway. If you sort of zoom out from the South Carolina perspective of it, zoom out from being a South Carolina fan, just both sides absolutely competed their tails off. Zia Cook stepping up when it mattered most, having a huge game for South Carolina. Destiny Henderson, later as the game progressed, she got more and more involved offensively and just hit some huge shots. And then to have a shot to win it at the end, you feel for somebody like Aaliyah Boston, who obviously just instantly was beside herself after the buzzer sounded. And you feel for the girls who, just like I said, competed their tails off. Honestly, that game and the national championship, I truly believe were both great for women's basketball, because you saw the skill, you saw the ability, and you saw two really just entertaining basketball games. And I know as they try to continue to grow this game and put the game on a level where it gets seen by more people, you have to have games like that. And I think there were a lot of people tuning in, and a lot of people who tuned in were very impressed with what they saw and impressed with both teams. But you have to, yes, Nathan, Gamecock Russ, everybody in the chat, you do hate when a game like that is decided by the stripes. And, I thought that was a very obvious kickball. We review everything else now in sports, which, don't get me started on that. I think, review has taken on a life of its own. It takes way too long. It slows the disruption of the game, or it sort of it slows the pace of the game, I should say. It disrupts the game in baseball, in basketball, in the NFL, across the board. Review has its pluses and minuses. But if we're already going to review everything, then there should be something in place with a massive call like that late in a game that is going to potentially, is going to help decide a championship, one game away from the national title game. You would think there would be a way to sort of implement review and get those calls right. That's just me, but the kickball was very obvious. Sometimes the problem with review is that you can slow it down, and it's still just impossible to tell. If when you're looking, was a guy tagged? If we're talking about baseball, is a guy tagged before his hand hits the base sliding in? You can go frame by frame. It's impossible. Sometimes trying to tell, if an out of bounds play went off somebody's fingertip is impossible, and it just takes forever, and it's sort of pointless. But a play like that, I don't really understand why we don't have a mechanism to stop things and say, look, this is an egregious bad call. We don't want this to affect the game. Let's go look at this and call it a kickball and get it right. But that's just me. Again, still my biggest takeaway, both sides just absolutely competed their tails off. South Carolina belonged. Stanford obviously belonged as well. And I believe that was the two best teams in the country playing right there. And then obviously did not go the Gamecocks' way. But they'll be back. Several big-time recruits coming in that get added to a group that already is obviously very good, very talented, and will have the experience now. We got to remember, y'all, most of this team had never played in an NCAA tournament before because you had so many sophomores on that floor that didn't get a chance to play in it last year because of the COVID cancellation. They would have, obviously. They would have made it and probably would have gone pretty far, but they didn't have that experience last year. And they stepped up. I think worth pointing out, they stepped up and became veterans, I feel like, as this year progressed and really stepped up to the challenge. So impressed with them. You have to be impressed with them. I thought it was really great of the fan base to have so many people show up when the girls got back and be there for them to have a little sort of almost mini parade when they arrived back in Columbia. That was a really nice touch. So kudos to the Gamecock fan base. Again, lots to talk about. It's just me. So any questions y'all have, throw them my way. We'll hit football, a men's basketball commitment. We just talked women's basketball and South Carolina baseball with another SEC win over the weekend. I want to start there because if I get into football, it'll sort of take on a life of its own. But baseball continues to roll. A tough defeat on Friday. I don't know how many of you watched the game on Friday. I was able to catch most of it. Really just a game where South Carolina was in position to win and faltered down the stretch. But this team, y'all, continues to prove that they are able to bounce back. They can face adversity. They can face situations that, obviously they don't want to be in, but they bounce back from them very well. They've now, obviously they had won 6 straight. They lost on Friday, but have now won, I guess that's 8 of 9. Is that right? 6 straight. Yeah. So really just bounced back from Friday, played very, very well on Saturday, played extremely well on Sunday. And how about Will Sanders, SEC co-freshman of the week? Someone that you knew from the reports coming out when South Carolina signed him that this kid was really, really good and had a huge upside. But to be doing what he's doing already as a true freshman and to be able to, it's one thing, as we've learned in baseball with all the analytics, it's one thing to go through the order the first time and be successful. It's completely different as a freshman at the SEC level to be able to churn through an order 2, 3, 4 times, maintain your ability to keep them guessing, basically, maintain your ability to keep your velocity up, and maintain your ability to continue to successfully mix pitches. And, he comes in, he throws hard, the changeup is good, the slider was biting pretty well most of the day on Sunday as well. So when you can command all those pitches, it doesn't matter if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, whatever, you're going to be pretty successful. But just that much more impressive that Sanders is doing this as a true freshman. And, watching what Julian Bosnick was able to do coming in out of the pen, I think that's a much better role for him moving forward. Not having to sort of, moderate yourself a little bit, not having to, you're not having to extend 2, 3, 4, 5 innings. If you're a starter, you're always sort of thinking about the big picture. I think if you come in as a reliever, you're able to sort of say, I've got 3 outs to get. I've got 2 outs to get. And if you're Bosnick, I think for his just currently where he's at as a player, that fits him very well. And I think actually puts him in a position to be another key piece out of this bullpen for South Carolina, and a lefty piece at that. So you're starting, I think it's always interesting as a year progresses, you take what you think a team is going to look like, and then you sort of, as it progresses, you tweak this, you tweak that. And I think that tweak of Sanders sort of coming on and taking over the Sunday role. And, I'll be curious to see, do they continue to call it TBA? or do they just give Sanders that starting spot because he's been so good in that role so far as a true freshman? You maybe just go ahead and lock him in and give him that spot and let Brett Carey focus completely on being a bullpen piece. I'll be curious to see if they take the same approach as they have the last 2 weeks, where they have called it TBA, but then they have obviously needed to use Brett Carey out of the bullpen. They've done that, and then Sanders has gotten the start. But to me, he's a guy that takes this team to another level in that he's been outstanding and is sort of outplaying what you projected of him to start the year, with him starting not in a Sunday role. And now the question becomes, do you start Mahoney again on Tuesday? Who can maybe take over that midweek role, and who can sort of go from there? But again, great weekend series win. The bats came out, especially game 2, game 3. You had a 2-home run game from Brady Allen. Wes Clark still leads the country in home runs. He added to his total a couple of times this week. And really one of those series where you go into and you say South Carolina should win this, but Georgia has been so good at beating South Carolina in recent years that you can't count it as a dub. So I think obviously very impressive all the way around with what South Carolina was able to do this weekend. Brian asked, are we where we should be, underachieving, or just right? Well, shoot, I think you left out the answer I would give, Brian. I would say at this point, South Carolina is overachieving this year. I mean, y'all can weigh in. Do y'all agree or disagree? I think for some people that's probably about what they thought. But if you had told me coming into the year, knowing how good the SEC was going to be, that you could have gone on the road at Vanderbilt, which, by the way, Vandy is as good, if not better, than we thought they would be on paper. Florida at home, which, again, South Carolina hadn't beaten Florida in a series, since beating them in the College World Series when you took 2 from them then. And then, and hadn't won a regular season series since before that, I guess. Plus, you have this Georgia team that on paper certainly is not up to the level of a Vandy or a Florida, but has consistently beaten South Carolina the last few years. It's been weird how good Georgia has been against South Carolina. It just doesn't compute with you because you traditionally think of South Carolina as being a better baseball program than Georgia. But if you told me after all that South Carolina would be 6-3 in the SEC with a series win already over Clemson, then I think if you're a South Carolina fan, you're taking that to the bank. You probably wouldn't have projected a sweep at the hands of Texas. You probably could have projected at least a midweek loss somewhere in there. You always are going to have a slip up or two as far as that goes. But if you had the option of beating Texas in that series or taking a 3-game sweep at Texas and then having this start in SEC play, 6-3 in SEC play, I think you take what has happened to South Carolina, the 6-3 SEC start. You take that every single day, right? And now, took care of business against Georgia. You have a Missouri team this weekend that is probably one of your worst teams in the league. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't beat you. They obviously can. But as far as opportunities and looking at this schedule, you have to beat Missouri this weekend. You absolutely have to win this series. They're 3-6 in SEC play right now against South Carolina 6-3. When you look at what's coming up, as Brian says, tough stretch coming up. Absolutely, you've got at LSU now, and LSU is 1-8 this year, which nobody would have ever projected or predicted that. But they're still LSU. It's still at LSU. Then you look past that. I mean, the next 3 weekends almost read like the top 5, basically. So you have Arkansas is number 2 in the country. Ole Miss is number 3 in the country. Mississippi State, number 5 in the country. Then at Kentucky, which is not ranked, at least by I'm using the SECsports.com website. I don't know exactly which rankings they officially use, y'all, but you've got the number 2 team, the number 3 team, the number 5 team, and the number 6 team left in SEC play to go along with Missouri, at LSU, and at Kentucky. So got to be ready, got to beat Missouri, got to find a way to at least take 2 of 3 from them this weekend and continue this positive momentum, which right now you would expect South Carolina to do. There's no signs right now of it slowing up. I tell you guys, I'm going to keep harping on this. Brennan Malone is still the guy that I circle and say, if he can get it going, that adds another element to this baseball team. So highly regarded out of high school. It's not quite worked out yet, but Malone was really, really good on Saturday, I thought. Had some really good at-bats, had some good swings, had a big hit, had another line drive that sort of, I think the Georgia third baseman made a great play on, and I think is showing progress and showing signs of life. So if you can get Brennan Malone, he was rewarded by his play on Saturday with another start on Sunday. If you can get him going, just adds another bat to this lineup moving forward for South Carolina. So we're going to move on. And yeah, Gamecock Russ, good point here. Khalil playing really well right now. He's going to have to keep that up, obviously. But when, he's such a good defender. I know he had the error on Friday, but most of the time he's such a good, smooth defender that he doesn't have to be one of your top 5 or 6 hitters in this lineup. But what you really need from Khalil is just for him not to have completely non-productive outs. It's not, he doesn't need to hit 350. If he can just hit 240 and have productive outs, move runners up, not hit into double plays, get the bunt down when you need him to, with as good as the rest of the lineup can be, especially when you have a guy like Burgess who actually had a really good week at the plate as well. When you have things like that going, Khalil just needs to be his normal great defensive self and be solid at the plate. So I think what you saw this weekend, a very, very nice sign, for this South Carolina team, because in baseball, we see that the way to actually have these big innings and to consistently put up runs is when you have that length in your lineup, and that's that every single out is difficult. And Khalil, for a stretch, was a borderline, automatic out, but now you're seeing him start to have better at bats. Confidence is going up, and just is one more spot where that pitcher can't take an at bat off. And when that happens, that's, I think, when you can consistently put up runs and put yourself in a situation to be a really good, consistent offense. So we'll see what they can do this week. Tuesday at North Carolina, the Charlotte matchup. That'll be interesting. North Carolina not quite having the year that you normally expect from them, and another very winnable game, I think, for South Carolina. So we'll see if they can keep that momentum up. Men's basketball over the weekend. Commitment from Chico Carter. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this just because I am not quite as familiar with him as maybe I would be some of the basketball, or excuse me, the football guys. But a former Cardinal Newman kid, obviously went to Murray State for a couple of seasons, now is back at South Carolina, announced his commitment actually right at noon on April 3rd on Saturday, and really had a strong year for Murray State this past season. Averaged 12 points, a couple of steals, really good from three, 44.2% from three, and 81% from the free throw line, and someone that South Carolina, recruited a little bit, but I don't think really did a whole lot with as far as offering him out of high school, and someone that obviously, as we see South Carolina losing some guys from this current roster to the transfer portal or potentially to professional ball, you're going to see them look to bring guys in from the transfer portal as well. And this is the first of those. I do think, and I've noticed some of the reaction on Twitter to guys leaving. Obviously, Trey Hannibal, Jalen McCrary, TJ Moss have already announced that they're leaving. Important to remember that with the scholarship situation being what it was, that South Carolina, having 4 incoming guys, not counting Chico, they were going to have some guys transfer out anyway. So, the fact that they've had 3 transfers, that's partially by design. You were going to have some transfers out to hit the 13 number anyway. So not really a complete surprise, or even a, I've seen that as a way to sort of down Frank Martin from some people, saying, well, you're having transfers. That's a bad thing. Well, honestly, transfers are happening everywhere in college basketball right now. So, if you want to go at Frank Martin for the record this past season, if you want to go at Frank Martin for, not making the tournament since the Final Four, if, whatever arguments you want to make about the future of the men's basketball program, all those things, that's your right. You can make an argument there. I just think using these transfers as a way of sort of saying that Frank Martin isn't well liked or doesn't have the program in whatever shape, I don't think that's your argument to make. I think that's going on everywhere, whether you're a successful program, non-successful program, in the middle, all over the place. Everybody is having transfers out right now, and most everybody is having transfers in right now as well. So we'll see what this looks like. And it's also, I think, as far as the program goes, it's harder to project what these rosters will look like because of the fact that kids can now try their hand at the NBA draft, as far as going and seeing what teams think of them, and then make a decision to come back after that. So it's very difficult. What does Keyshawn Bryant do? What does Jermaine Couisnard do? What does AJ Lawson do? All those guys will play a big part in seeing what exactly this team looks like next year. And I think getting if they can get somebody like Keyshawn Bryant back, then, or AJ Lawson back, then that obviously is a huge key for this team moving forward, and a huge key for them having a chance for next year and not to be, another disappointing year for South Carolina. But by all indications, Chico Carter appears to be a solid pickup, appears to be a guy that can shoot for them, appears to be someone that can hit his free throws when he gets to the line, and will add, I think the important thing is here, adds a shooting element to the team that South Carolina, I think needs to add. So a nice pickup for South Carolina there going into the transfer portal. We will see if they remain active in going out and getting people. But again, whether or not they can bring in transfers or not will be determined on which guys decide to come back and which guys don't. And John on Facebook says, my argument about Frank Martin is one trip to the tournament in 9 years, period. And again, John, if that's your argument, that's a perfectly valid argument. Like I understand that. I'm only saying the people who are using the transfers as reasoning to then down Frank Martin. I don't think that's your argument there. I think you don't need to make up, not that you are personally. I'm just talking about some of the stuff I've seen on Twitter. Transfers are a part of the game at this point and really have no bearing on whether you're a good program or a bad program. It's happening everywhere right now, was my point about the transfers and what's going on right there. Let's turn the page to football, and then we'll close it out. Again, I'm going solo today, so maybe not a full hour, but was super pumped to be back out there and head out to South Carolina's football practices today. Was out there for about 4 sessions this morning. Shout out to Steve Fink. Shout out Shane Beamer for letting the media be out there. And again, shout out to all the workers at Gamecock Park. While we were out there, they had the full, huge vaccination site going. If you have not gotten your vaccine yet and you're wanting it and you just haven't been able to set it up or something, just going out to Gamecock Park, from what I understand, pretty much anybody can get it at this point. They have tons of supplies. It's actually a very quick, very efficient process. So again, shout out to all the workers, whether you are, first line workers, National Guard, volunteers, whoever else was out there. They were doing a fantastic job. And I think we gotta recognize, those people more for the hard work they're doing and helping us get back to normal. Not here to tell you all about whether you should or shouldn't, all that's your decision. But if you've been thinking about getting the vaccine and looking for a place to get it done in this area, Gamecock Park, give them a thumbs up. I got my Pfizer one. I was perfectly fine. Had a little arm soreness. Good to go. Other than that, so again, shout out to Gamecock Park and all the hard workers out there. Back to practice. Great to be back out there. Beautiful day for practice, high energy. And I wish there was more information to give y'all, because I know this is the time of year where everybody is sort of just wanting any little morsel of information they can get. Still, they were in pads today. Still hard to tell a whole lot without seeing actual 11 versus 11, which we didn't get to see any of that. But I did take some notes. And so, and I don't know how much you can even put into a depth chart at this point, because really I tend to think depth charts in the spring are more about, who's doing every single thing they're asked of. Sometimes it's about who's maybe played more, who's who's the veteran and who's not. But I do think they maybe tell us something, especially if you look at maybe if there have been changes in the depth chart from one practice to the next, or from maybe one, from last offseason to this offseason. You can tell maybe who has stepped up. And I think it is interesting. Jalen Nichols. That was a spot that I circled on my notes here. By the way, first team O-line today was Jazz Turnitin at left tackle, Jalen Nichols at left guard, Eric Douglas at center, Javon Gwynn at right guard, and Dylan Wanham at right tackle. That's the same starting group that was out there at least at the beginning of practice day one. And to me, Nichols possibly being in a position to take over that left guard spot, it is noteworthy because he didn't play a whole lot last year. If you look back the year before, he actually played quite a bit to be a true freshman. He played quite a bit in a reserve role and then started when some guys were hurt, and then, was never really in the mix this past season, and now is working with the ones there at left guard. And, I think a guy who physically fits the left guard position or fits the guard position in general. He played some tackle early in his career, was always deemed as a kid who could play guard or tackle. But I think seeing him out there with the first team group here now, 2 practices that I've been at, was noteworthy. The other thing, Chad Terrell continuing to work with the first team wide receivers. This is someone that, again, Chris and I have talked about it. Chris, for those of you who are on Gamecock Central, he's reported Chad Terrell had his best offseason as a Gamecock, and it's sort of being rewarded for the hard work that he's put in, working with the first team group. DeCarrion Joyner working with the first team group at slot. Jalen Brooks working with the first team group at the other outside wide receiver spot. Then Nick Muse, first team at tight end. Luke Doty, first team at quarterback. And Zaquandre White, again, working with the first team at running back and getting rewarded. Kevin Harris was back out there, appeared to be moving around and appeared to be 100% and was working actually with that second team group. So I thought, again, you can't take a whole lot from that, but worth mentioning where some guys are standing right now. Colton Gothier was working with the second team group at quarterback and really have received a ton of praise for his early just ability to pick up the offense, to make the throws in practice, and to be in a position, as a young guy coming in from private school ball, as a young guy coming in that had 4 different offensive coordinators in 4 years, had multiple head coaches during that span, and really has just picked things up very well. If y'all have not heard Colton talk, go on YouTube, just type in South Carolina Gamecocks, and Colton spoke last week and really did a good job, I thought, in his first media setting of sort of giving people a little bit of an idea of what he is all about. Let's see, we got a question and a comment. A few comments here. Let's see. CJ, I want to see our 4- and 5-star guys shine, like Sandage, Pickens, Birch, and Huntley. Russ says Zaquandre is a great team guy. I agree. And actually, Zaquandre White, one of my favorite guys on the team, just the way he carries himself. Rashad Amos and Jalen Dickerson, were they out there? Rashad Amos was definitely out there. Jalen Dickerson, that's a good question. There's so much going on. Hold on. Y'all give me 1 second. I'm going to check Colin's notes and see if he happened to mention Jalen Dickerson working with the secondary. Neither one of us noted Jalen Dickerson working with either team on defense. So he may have been one of the guys who was not out there. I'm not sure. And for those who don't know, generally, you have it separated out. Like sometimes a guy, we'll see a guy's not there and they'll be in the indoor facility. Anybody that's banged up is normally in the indoor facility and working on doing some type of like rehab or physical therapy or something like that. Not saying at all that that's the case with Jalen Dickerson right now. Have not been told that, but I did not personally put eyes on him or notice him this morning. Nathan says my biggest concern is DB and linebacker. I think that is a valid concern. Local Sports Talk says front 7 is fine. Our DBs are where you're worried. And I think all that's fair. I think there are question marks at all of those positions. And by the way, Colin, if you're not a Gamecock Center subscriber, Colin Taylor had the first team defense, at least as far as the first part of practice. And I thought this was interesting. Brad Johnson working with the first team at linebacker. He and Sherrod Green were the 2 sort of starting guys in the 4-2-5. You just have the 2 little inside linebacker spots, and Sherrod and Brad were the 2 first guys there. Enigbare, Jabari Ellis, Zach Pickens, and Aaron Sterling were the first 4 up on the defensive front. And then in the secondary, you actually had Donald Fortune, Jalen Foster, David Spalding, R.J. Roderick, and Dominic Hill. Apparently, Cam Smith and Marcellus Dow for part of that drill were just not out there on the field, but they were at practice today. Obviously, I think Cam Smith's probably going to be one of your starting cornerbacks this year, but just at that particular time, they were doing something else and were not in that drill. So I don't know if you can tell a whole lot from that listing as far as the secondary goes, but interesting that O.D. Fortune and Dom Hill were at least for that drill working with the first team at cornerback. Let's see. We got any more questions? Let's see. We did have another question, and I'm about to close it out here if y'all don't have any questions. But if you do have questions, I'll try to hit as many as I can before I roll. Let's see. Yes, Sandage is fine. For those who have not seen, Tia is asking about it on here. He was in a wreck on Friday. Said he had a headache. I think he cut his hand or something, but he is fine. But he was not out there, but they actually expect him to be back in the next few days. He's been dealing with a little bit of an ankle injury that he had before the accident, had nothing to do with the accident. He had missed the first little bit of practice anyway, the first few practices because of the little ankle injury, but is expected back here practicing pretty soon. Let's see. Cam Smith's weight. I do not know his updated weight. I know he looks like a guy who has put on a little bit of good weight from what I saw. He looks, Cam has always, sort of looked the part, but obviously came in and needed to add some strength, needed to add some weight. And Cam is currently listed at 6 foot 187 on the South Carolina roster. So I do think Cam has put on some muscle, added some strength, which is clearly a big deal for him. Let's see. Hit a few more questions for you guys. What position group am I most concerned about? I mean, I think you nailed it. I think it becomes DB until it's not. I think that's a spot you'd look at. Losing a J.C. Horn, losing an Izzy Mukwamu, losing a Jamie Robinson. I really thought Johnny Dixon had a chance to play a ton this year. He obviously played a lot last year. He's probably locked in as a starter this year if he would have stayed, and obviously transferred out and went to Penn State. But I think until the DBs show that they are ready for SEC ball, then yeah, that remains a big question mark. That doesn't, I'm not bashing the kids. That doesn't mean that they can't be successful by any means. It just means that that is your biggest question mark, I think, moving forward. Now, Cam Smith going to have a big year. He's going to have a really good year for South Carolina. Marcellus Dial is someone that I've heard some good positive things about early on. That he looks the part athletically, that maybe he's a guy who comes right in. He is already on campus and pushes for a starting spot right off the bat. Isaiah Norris, the other junior college kid coming in, they are high on him. They believe he's got a chance to be really, really good. And, we'll see how quickly he can pick things up. And then, I think it's about the young players. How quickly can a Dominic Hill pick things up? Can RJ Roderick, a guy who's a veteran now, obviously, can he bounce back and have a big year? All those things are questions in the secondary that, frankly, there'll be questions until they're not. There'll be questions until the games start and until they are able to go out and prove what they could do. And I think some of this will be very hard to tell until the games are played, because you have two positions with question marks that are right up against each other every single day in practice. And what I mean by that is that you have obviously the defensive backs and the receivers. If you're a coach, you're judging them on how they perform in practice. And both of those, the receivers may be the biggest question mark on offense. The DBs may be the biggest question mark on defense. And you're trying to judge how good they're going to be based on how they do against each other. So I think it's hard to really say until those position groups are able to go out and play against SEC competition. All right, cool. Lots of good questions here. I'm going to try to run through them here, y'all. Position group I am least concerned about, I would say, has to be running backs. That's the spot I think you don't worry about at all. I think they'll be really, really good, and I think they'll actually potentially be dynamic. So for me, running backs probably one, tight ends probably next. I think with the experience you have there and what you have added to the group and the young guys you have there, the guys that are now healthy. Kevion Mullins is sort of the forgotten guy there. Jaheim Bell. Somebody asked about Jaheim Bell. Jaheim Bell was out there and practicing in full go, which is obviously good to see for him. So running backs, least concerned. I would say tight ends is next on that list. Third on that list, I don't know. I think you'd probably have to ask me that in a couple of months when we see how much and who progresses on the O-line, how much and who progresses on the D-line, and how much and who progresses at quarterback. Those would be the position groups in the running for third as far as the least worry goes. CJ wants to know how Debo and how much he'll play this year. I think he'll have a chance to play quite a bit. I also think we need to sort of pump the brakes a little bit and remember that he is a true freshman. The kid has the right attitude. Was really, really good in high school. He's going to have a chance to be really good here, but I think we've got to remember, even though he was a transfer, that he is a true freshman. So, want to see more out of him as far as just seeing him in a game setting, seeing him in a spring game setting. But certainly I think he'll be in the mix at linebacker. Whether that's as a starter or a reserve, I think will be determined, in the next 5 months as we see how everything plays out. Quarterback competition. Nathan wants to know if it will get tight. It's an interesting question, Nathan. I think right now, reading between the lines, that Luke Doty is your presumed starter. I think he has a pretty nice edge as far as being the presumed starter. And I think it's going to take a lot for someone to step up and beat him. All that said, it's April 5th. There's still a long time. You still got the rest of spring. You've got the summer, and you've got the preseason to go as well. So who's to say a Jason Brown can't get comfortable and start pushing? Who's to say Colton Gothier can't push for that job? So there's still to be determined. But if you're just asking my opinion, sort of predict the future here a little bit, I would be kind of surprised if Luke Doty is not South Carolina starter game 1 when the Gamecocks tee it up this year. Let's see. Patrick wants to know how involved Frank Beamer will be. Not involved at all officially, from what I understand. No sort of off the field role type thing, but I think he'll be more involved just unofficially, as far as being a sounding board for Shane Beamer, being someone Shane Beamer can call up if he has a question about particular situations and stuff. Obviously, you don't know what it's like to be a head coach until you're a head coach. So there are situations that will come up for Shane Beamer that he's never been in his whole life. And, it's nice for him to have someone who he can then lean on, to know what to do in those situations. Brian wants to know, is Jordan Strong in the convo? I think Jordan Strong is definitely in the conversation at the edge position. I saw him today. He looks the part. A long-armed, tall, pretty lean, but has put on some muscle type kid. Look the way you want a pass rusher to look. So, we'll see where he sort of falls into the mix as far as fight. I mean, you're fighting it out with Enigbare, with Aaron Sterling, with Jordan Birch, those guys. But I think safe to say he'll have every chance to be in the 2 deep at defensive end, and how they perform in the next, 5 months will determine who the starters are and who's coming in after. Let's see. Rosendo Lewis is indeed healthy. Saw him out there today, so that was obviously good. Best guess on starting center, I would give the edge to Eric Douglas again. Although I will say, worth mentioning, probably the biggest takeaway from Jimmy Lindsey and Greg Atkins speaking today, combined, the biggest takeaway from either one of them was how much praise that Greg Atkins had for Vinny Murphy, who, and Vinny's playing center, he's playing guard, tough-nosed kid, hasn't really gotten his opportunity much yet as far as to go play in a game. I think with some of the injuries and stuff South Carolina had last year, you probably would have seen Vinny Murphy play in the bowl game before the bowl game got canceled last year. I think he was in line to get a lot more PT than he had been getting. That obviously didn't happen. Now with a new start, new coach, new approach, Murphy's been good apparently. So I think that's a great sign for that unit. And you'll probably still give the edge to the veteran there, but I think with Murphy pushing at guard and center, that was one other thing Atkins said. If you can play multiple spots, then that gives you a really good chance to get on the field. And I think it sounds like Murphy has put himself in that position. All right, y'all. I'm gonna get a few more questions here. I need a drink of water here. Y'all give me a second. You don't miss Chris Clark. You don't realize how much you appreciate Chris Clark until you do the show without him. Because this is the time of the show that I would normally make him talk a lot. Have a good one, Craig. Appreciate you joining, man. Would I redshirt Colton Gothier? Too early to say, but I think the 4 game rule is really nice for young quarterbacks. And the fact that you can play a kid for 4 games and still redshirt him. And, you can make both sides of that argument because quarterbacks generally, if they don't play, they transfer. So, I think less and less of the time are you really looking to redshirt a guy. So I I don't think you go into the year saying you're going to redshirt Colton, but if you have an opportunity, to play him in 4 games and still save his year of eligibility, that's probably the approach I would take. Now, if he ends up being the number 2 guy, which right now, I think you have a real competition there for number 2 with him and Jason Brown. If Colton is your number 2 and he ends up in the game, in a situation where he's having to play, via injury or some other reason, then then absolutely you have to play him and not worry about the red shirt. If a guy's going to help you, if a guy can help you, I think you play him and you don't worry about the red shirt at all. Let's see. CJ wants to know most underrated freshman or incoming transfer that will get the most playing time and will shine when the time is presented. It's a good question. I hate to just steal Gamecock Russ's answer, but I think Chris and I talked about this question a while back, and Amarian Brown has been my answer really from the beginning. I tend to think of the newcomers, if you were going to put like a percentage on it, Brown is probably the guy that has the greatest opportunity, the greatest percentage opportunity to help right away, if that makes sense. Now, if we start talking about upside and who could make the biggest impact, I sort of maybe say EJ Jenkins. I think I sort of have said it like this. I think Brown will almost definitely make an impact of some type of, some kind of impact. Whereas Jenkins, there's a little bit more of an if, will he make an impact type thing, in that there are some question marks, guys making a big step up from FCS ball. He's sort of changing positions from receiver to tight end. So there are more questions. But in the case of EJ Jenkins, if it all clicks, then you're like, man, this guy is a freak matchup for opponents and quickly becomes a major part of South Carolina's offense. So I think the floor is a little bit higher for Amarian Brown. The ceiling is a little bit higher if you're talking about EJ Jenkins. But those are the 2 guys as far as newcomers that I say have the best chance to to come in and help South Carolina right away. After that, I don't know, maybe a Jordan Strong. After that, you're hoping that a Marcellus Dial can help out in the secondary. That would be huge for South Carolina if Dial can come in and lock down a starting spot, because as we talked about a little bit earlier, you're going to need as many guys as you absolutely can find to help at defensive back. CJ wants to know if Ortre will have his breakout year this year. That's the hope. That's the belief. That's he, I believe, is in the best shape he's been in a long time. He is in a position where I think he's comfortable again. I think he's physically in a good place. I think he's mentally in a good place. And I think for both Ortre and for the team, that would be absolutely huge, for the Gamecocks if Ortre Smith can sort of come on. Because, again, I think that there are guys in the receiving corps. There's a lot of bodies at this position, a lot of players who could potentially step up and play really well. You just don't know who to pick out of that group. You don't know who it's going to be, basically. And really all you need is 3 or 4 of these guys to step up, and they all have potential. And then all of a sudden you actually feel much better about the receiving corps than you maybe did coming into the year. Appreciate the tip there, Local Sports Talk, throwing me a 99-cent tip. Appreciate you, man. JE wants to know, what round will Shy get drafted? Why is he the best team fit for the Eagles? Guessing you're an Eagles fan. Aren't you a Phillies fan too? There's a no Phillies fan rule that I have just implemented on the show. But no, I think Shy third or fourth round, probably fair. Hopefully Shy sneaks into the third round. I think that's possible. I never claimed to be an NFL draft expert, but I do think Shy's a really good player, and I think Shy can stick in the league for a while, actually, if he finds the right fit. So I'll say late third for Shy, and we'll see where he ends up. But as far as the actual round goes, I'll say third. As far as the team, I'm not sure. Let's see. A couple more questions, and I'm going to get out of here. Nathan, over under 2,000 yards and 15 touchdowns for the running back group. I think over on that. And I'm not a stat nerd, but I think that's very doable as a group. I don't know off the top of my head what South Carolina rushed for last year. But when you think of the duo they have there, then add in Zaquandre White, add in Rashad Amos, add in Juju McDowell, and add in the threat of the quarterback run as well. Obviously, you wouldn't count that in you wouldn't take that in the group in the rushing totals, but it helps, I think, as far as the output there, that teams have to sort of account for your quarterback. I think that's important as well. So yeah, I'll go over. All right, y'all. I think that's going to do it. Appreciate the show as always. Appreciate the support. Appreciate y'all coming in and hanging out with me and hanging in there, even though it was just me, Chris Clark, sitting on a beach somewhere, maybe hanging out, maybe having a cold beverage. I'm very jealous of him right now, but we'll be back for a show. I believe I'll probably do one on Wednesday as well. May get some special guests to join us if possible. And then on Friday, I'll have Colin Taylor on, as always. Colin does every Friday to come in and help preview the baseball series and whatever else is going on in Gamecock Nation. Appreciate the support. Hey, Gamecock Russ, tell everybody about your YouTube, man. Y'all can go subscribe. Subscribe to Gamecock Central on YouTube. Search for that right now. Hit the subscribe button and hit up Gamecock Russ on there as well and subscribe to his YouTube too. He'll have some good Gamecock content on there, I can promise you. And CJ keeps asking me about the merchandise. Man, I'm telling you, I want some GC merchandise, but I just don't have the time to put together the store. So if anybody that has some information on how to easily put together the store for Gamecock merch, for Gamecock Central merchandise, shoot me a message or something, because that's been in the cards, but it always gets pushed to the back because content comes first. And between the show, content on the page, and just trying to keep up with everything else going on, social media stuff, getting the merchandise store up and running just always gets pushed to the back of the line. And but if there is a huge need or a want, if y'all would buy Gamecock Central stuff, then yes, we need to do it. We want to do it. We've talked about it, honestly, forever. It just hasn't happened yet. So hopefully we can do that in the not so distant future and get something going and have some, and maybe we'll even give away some shirts and some stuff like that if possible. But yeah, appreciate the support. Appreciate y'all. Come check us out, GamecockCentral.com. And of course, we'll see you on Wednesday for the next episode of GC Live. Appreciate y'all.